All right. Hopefully you guys can hear me. But I'm going to be reviewing both today's and yesterday's trades because I didn't get around to doing the trade review yesterday. We took a lot of trades yesterday. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to try to keep this very short. I want to keep this within 30 minutes, but covering 2 days of action is going to be difficult. But all right, here was the setup yesterday. Now, if you take a look at the 15-minute, clearly it's an uptrend. And clearly, this is bullish consolidation, but it's not super bullish consolidation. This is more so when I see this, uh, it's going to go up eventually, right? But, this recent leg is almost like an individual leg because of this area of kind of, this isn't even really bullish consolidation, this kind of chopping up. So this is kind of one single leg right here. And this, what looks to be a falling wedge, as bullish consolidation actually invalidates nearly this entire leg at the lowest. And that's typically something you don't want to see with consolidation. The less clean the proportions are of your first leg and then your consolidatory leg, the less clean the results are going to be, right? So obviously I have bullish bias, but not super bullish, like to where it's going to go up right now and it's going to go up a long ways. Now, yesterday was kind of a weird day because Powell was talking at 7 o'clock, and U.S., Israel, Iran stuff were happening. Market was rallying because Trump brokered a peace deal or a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and they apparently both violated the ceasefire, and it's just a big headache for everyone involved. So the markets were kind of, I mean, at least my sentiment was I don't really know if it's going to go through or not. And it seems like the market's kind of felt the same way, so pretty choppy. But regardless, we do have a lot of pivots near. And let me scroll back in my channel to, I actually ended up trading for an entire hour and a half yesterday morning. So yeah, that was my pre-market sentiment. It's bull flag, it's bullish, um, but not like I'm not super bullish on it. Now, I ended up entering my first trade at the close of this candle. Basic stuff here. We have pivots above and below, right? And I'll just mark these out real quick. Very basic, NQ stronger, invalidated the drop, bullish to the nearest point of liquidity, which is my yellow line. And like all these are liquidity points, but so yeah, I enter KQQ calls here. I did have to enter these. I thought about entering full size, but I didn't. I entered uh, half size. No, I did enter full size, did not enter half size. And really, okay, so like this PT here is technically the first PT, but realistically, I'm looking for ES to break this supply here. Right? Because if NQ gets this PT, ES should be somewhere up here by that time. I'm looking for this. So really, I'm looking for NQ to get somewhere around here. And by that time, depending on how it looks, I'll also be bullish for it to break supply. Stop loss is pretty basic, where my hypothesis is invalidated. I am in because of this candle. I will be out if this candle invalidates. And right from the start, I stop out on this candle. Stop out early in this candle, just right when I entered, just turned its ass around and went down. Unfortunately, NQ did flip very weak. It did not stay strong whatsoever. And that's one thing you're going to notice about yesterday. Strength changes all over the place. Perhaps one of the days where, I'm trying to say the verbiage of this properly, but I don't think there was a day this year that had more strength changes than this day, yesterday. There might have been some, but in my recent memory, this is the day with the highest amount of strength changes. Every 5 minutes, ES would flip strong or NQ would flip strong. It was very complicated, but I had to stop out. I was full size. Every time I'm full size, I have to honor my stop loss. Only thing I could have been done different is I could have been half size, but realistically, it was a pretty easy stop loss location. And keep in mind, we did have all these lows. We had these higher lows underneath, which I am bearish to hit if I stop out. Now, spoiler alert, we didn't hit it, which is extremely surprising. But I am bearish for that to hit once this pretty much stop loss is hit. So yeah, I did end up filling. I got a trash fill in those calls at 65 cents. I stopped out at 48 cents for whatever the math is there. That's like 25%, I believe. Something like that. 25% ish. Full size trade. So starting out the day red, unfortunately. Have to honor my stop loss though. And then NQ just magically flipped super strong right after. You know, ES is a red candle, NQ is a green one. So that was interesting. And I ended up filling calls again on this candle. I have to. Because I'm triggered right back in to the exact same trade that I took before. Now, I did end up saving buying power to add, so I did enter this roughly half size. But this is the exact same trade as before. Minus the stop loss is a little softer. But on this candle, it looked like ES might have started flipping strong again, but it's hard to tell because they're pretty much at the same location. And here's ES going. Looks pretty good. Now ES is stronger than NQ. Again, like it just keeps flipping back and forth. It was pretty difficult today. And we end up hitting this pivot here. I don't believe I trimmed at all because that wasn't really my PT. ES finally hit this pivot, but I did end up entering SPX on this candle. I believe it was this candle. Yep, on this candle. Wasn't all the way at the bottom of this candle. It was this one. And I was in with half size as well. I'm looking for this pivot here. Now, this is kind of an unorthodox trade. You know, it's kind of a bearish liquidity sweep. But during the candle, obviously the candle closed a little bit more bearish than what it was when I waited to enter. Keep in mind, I typically only enter in the last 10 seconds of the candle. But ES flipped a lot stronger than NQ. And it was apparent when NQ swept that pivot. Hang on. I believe I might have entered. Hang on. I need to figure this out. No, I entered after it because it shot up and then it came back down for a pullback. But when I entered, it was still a fairly bullish candle. But then after I entered, it kind of confirmed a bearish liquidity sweep. Unfortunately, the time with so many trades today, the exact timing of when I entered is a bit harder to remember. But anyways, we did make a lower low with a buying wick, and it ended up being great. ES hit PT. Glad I was in SPX as well, and I was able to be in SPX as well because I was only in PQQ, roughly half size. I typically won't enter. I will never be exposed more than 1.5x of my normal trade size. In between both of these trades, I was in with roughly 1x. Half size, half my normal size in PQ, and half my normal size in SPX. So I ended up doing pretty good. I took profits here. At this point, PQ calls got roughly 28%. Or no, that is false. That was a little bit later. But my next PT was NQ supply break. Wasn't actually trying to really go for that. But here, PQ calls got 28% gains. SPX calls got 34% gains. I only had small runners left. I only had runners left at this point. They get a little bit higher, and then I sold my runners during this candle. So pretty much dumped everything minus a little bit here. Sold some more here on these selling wicks. Only had a runner position left for a supply break, and I stopped out my last runners here. So green trade. I'm green on the day. Not green by much on the day. I'm green by a fraction of a green trade. Only because that first loss was one full size trade. And between both of these trades, it might have been slightly larger than a full size trade. And I averaged about 28 to 30% gains. So roughly I'm up by like 5% gains on the day of one trade. So very small green, but great trade. And now, as you guys know, NQ has a lot of pivots down here. Lots of pivots down here. Very, very, very bearish for those to break. Very rarely do they not break. Spoiler, today they did not break. But if we invalidate a majority of this run, I'm in puts. And what is the exact time that I entered? Okay, I think I entered at the end of 651. I believe it was at the end of this candle. Yeah, it was between, yeah, it was here. So it did bounce right after I entered. Let me check on the chart to make sure I entered. Oh, no, I didn't. I entered roughly down here. Roughly down here is where I filled. So when I entered, it did bounce, unfortunately. But at the time, NQ looked weaker than ES. The candle before this one, this red candle made a lower low. ES did not. It has smaller buying wicks, but of course on the candle that I enter on, NQ reverses and flip strong. Now, I'm only in this half size, and I'm rather early on this trade. I think I entered right when it got to 50%. Yeah, right when it broke below the 50% fib. But now with ES being weaker, I'm thinking about doing the same thing. Instead of just adding to my QQQ trade, SPX is looking a lot better at the moment, but let's see what happens. So clearly, it is looking a lot better. You can see here that NQ flipped pretty strong. And I believe it was on this candle that I entered SPX puts. Now, this was a huge issue because we have a massive strength divergence. NQ is going up, ES is going down, which is not good. Not good at all. Now, I was in QQQ fairly light, half size, and I entered SPX half size as well. And I said my channel took an ad here on QQQ as it bounces. But kind of the game plan that I'm looking at is, okay, well, the NASDAQ looks like it's bearishly consolidating. It's trying to put in a bear flag. It's getting higher highs and kind of rejecting from those highs, but in a very micro scale. I need to get out of QQQ, and I need to move my money to SPX. Because if SPX goes down, which it has been doing, I don't know if the NASDAQ is going to go down. But I know if the NASDAQ goes down, ES is likely to dump, right? So my money needs to be on ES. I'm on the wrong side right now. And of course, at the time of entry, I made the correct decision by getting to NQ. It's just by luck that it keeps flipping right after I enter. So that's kind of the plan. And here is where I took my ad on the NASDAQ. And look at the strength divergence. Like, this is rare. Look at it. It is literally opposites. So I did take a bit of a risk, and I did take my average down on QQQ. Now, keep in mind, I was a little less than half size on SPX, and now I was roughly in a full-size trade on NQ. So I'm pretty much at my max leverage right now. I can't add anymore. That's it. I'm at 1.5x leverage across these two positions. But my goal is that NQ somehow puts in not really somehow, NQ puts in a fractal head and shoulders, and I'm going to dump this the second it comes back down. Not all of it, but I'm going to heavily trim the NASDAQ so I can move that money to SPX. And I get it here. The NASDAQ starts flipping green. I'm able to start trimming my position for green, and I add to my SPX puts. Now, my initial QQQ entry was 66 cents. My SPX entry was 2.5, but I filled my average down on QQQ at, oh, that's a typo. I said it was 0.55, it was 0.45, because my dollar cost average was 51 cents. So I filled my average down at 45 cents. My average was 51. It hit it on this candle. I started moving money over, but still left a half-size position. And it ended up working out. I sold nearly everything when SPX or when ES hit this first pivot. I only had a very small position left for this one. Now keep in mind, initially, NQ was weaker, and I was more bearish on NQ because look at all these higher lows NQ has. These usually hit. But now because NQ flipped extremely strong, I mean, look at it. My average is now all the way up here only because I got a very nice average down, which I'm allowed to do because I entered with half size initially. Otherwise, if I didn't, I'd have to stop out like I did with that first trade. But realistically, look where ES is. Look how far NQ is from those pivots. If NQ is going to get all the way down to those pivots, ES is going to have to get through both of these pivots, and it's going to have to end up in very heavy demand. It's not looking very likely given the chart. Plus, keep in mind, we are still chopping downwards, which means lower lows and lower highs. I'm expecting a bounce after a lower low, especially given the context of this demand, right? So I'm not thinking NQ is going to get down here, at least at the moment. So take a very heavy trim on this candle. Pretty much a runner position left, and I'm only looking for this pivot now on ES. The second I get this pivot, I'm out. Right? I'm very lucky to be green on the NASDAQ trade right now because it is so much stronger. And really early into this candle, it dumped perfectly to my PT. I market sold. I got a terrible fill roughly up here because I put in a huge buying wick. But that's it. I'm out. So that ended up being pretty good. The QQQ puts actually ended up going up a fair amount because of my average down. I got 37% gains on QQQ puts. And SPX, I got 28% gains. Now keep in mind, I was heavier. I was roughly at 1.5x leverage between the both instead of just one. So right now I'm green by 1.5, 30% trades on the day. So I'm mildly green on the day, pretty good. It's looking much better at the moment. But now we have a confirmed bullish liquidity sweep on ES in demand with lower lows, and we also have lower lows on NQ. Looks like a falling wedge, all of that. So, of course, if we invalidate most of this drop, I will be in longs, or calls in this case. And by the way, if we do end up dropping on the NASDAQ here, if NASDAQ flips weak and we drop to here, I'm probably going to have to take puts, because then those pivots are going to be much more likely to hit. Not entering here. Oh, forgot about this trade. Yeah. I forgot about this trade. This was unlucky. So looking back on this trade, it is a little bit early of an entry in regards to how much this drop invalidates. But NQ did invalidate most of this drop. And look at these candles. Look how much stronger it is than ES. So it's a lot stronger than ES. It's making lower highs. So I'm very much so expecting this next candle to be up to here. And ES is putting in a buying wick indicating a bounce up to here. Now I'm bullish for ES to get the supply at this point. Which means if I believe NQ's the next one or two green candles, it's going to clear this high here. That means ES is going to be somewhere around here. Well, by that time, I'm very bullish for ES to hit supply, which has a pretty damn good shot if I don't get a terrible strength change from strong or weak on NQ. There's a good chance we get new high of day. So I entered here, only half size, kind of as an early entry. And keep in mind, this is not news time. This is 7:07 my time. News usually comes out at 8, right? Half size. And then this candle happens. I stop out pretty much immediately. I kind of stopped out on the bounce when it was putting in the buying wick. The buying wick was higher at a point. But yeah, I don't even remember this trade because this was literally like a 15-second trade. I don't even know what happened to the market. It's just, yeah. So very unlucky there. My second loss of the day wasn't bad though because I was only half size and I stopped out for minus 31% immediately. Now, obviously, if I enter half size, I plan on maybe averaging down or averaging up. That's kind of the whole point of entering with half size. But that doesn't mean I average out every time. That's not a free pass to try to save a red trade. That means there's room within the hypothesis to further confirm my trade by averaging down or averaging up. But if the hypothesis isn't validated, then I stop out. The hypothesis could not have been more invalidated here. Like completely invalidated, done. And at this point, as you guys know or should know, I am now super bearish for all of these yellow lines to hit. On NQ, no idea what caused this. You know, there is a ton of volume, which could indicate reversal, but there's pretty much no buying wick on NQ. There is a big buying wick on ES. It goes all the way down to here if you can't see it on my screen, because of really heavy demand and all those and all that. But NQ didn't have a buying wick, so NQ flipped super weak. This was a great put trade here, and I almost alerted puts, and I even said that I was going to get inputs, but then the next candle started, and I was waiting for it to roughly finish with a small green candle or just show hesitation. If the next candle opens green, but it just kind of stalls for the first 15 seconds, I'll enter. But when this next candle opened, it started green and it just slowly climbed and climbed and climbed. And it climbed to the point of roughly here. I'm like, okay, now I got to wait for it to invalidate. Once it comes back down to here, then I can take the trade. And that never happened. We end up getting a massive green candle. ES nearly went all the way back up. And now I'm thinking, okay, that is very bizarre. It is extremely rare that you have these pivots stay intact. And in fact, spoiler alert, they're still intact to this day, I believe, unless price action dumped a ton. No, it definitely did not. So these pivots are still intact today. So this is a major level. And 95% of the time, when you have that many higher lows that close to each other, they're going to sweep the same day. But now I'm starting to think, well, that was a huge volume spike. That was a proper bullish liquidity sweep on ES. We swept pivots, we swept demand, we're bouncing out of it, massive volume, big buying wick, all the things that you want. I'm starting to consider the possibility that retail traders all just got hornswoggled and it was a stop loss raid, so institutions can fill and it runs up. So yeah, that was my second loss of the day. Again, 31% loss, but I was only half size. So my two losses today were minus 25% full size, and you can say minus 15% of a full size trade. But anyways, so now I'm like, all right, well, if this goes back up, I'm going to be reconfirmed into my trade. And sure enough, I was. It wasn't on this candle, though. It was on this candle. 100%. Let me check, though. Yep. So, same trade. Same trade, but the odds are higher. The odds would have been astronomically high if NQ actually swept these lows down here, but it didn't. But yeah, I did re-enter, and I was roughly half size, but I actually just was a little bit more than half size because I upped the contract amount because contracts were a little cheaper, but just a tad too much. Only because of the possible inverse head and shoulders here. But this is great. This is a perfect trend line. And when you have perfect trend lines, they break. Okay. Or I believe this was a perfect trend line. There was a couple perfect trend lines yesterday. This is a pretty much perfect one. They break. Perfect trend lines break, just like perfect double tops, triple bottoms, all those things, they break. So we break to the upside, and NQ's nice. NQ's stronger than ES. But wait, of course, NQ's going to flip weaker than ES here. Like clockwork. So I enter SPX calls as well, half size here. And I typically trade both if it's unpredictable which way the strength is going to go. That's why sometimes if you see me guys enter QQQ and SPX calls, it's because either the strengths keep switching and I don't know which one's going to be stronger next, or they're about even and I don't know if that's going to change, right? However, if one's just stronger, then I'm just going to enter that one. But on today, essentially it's me spreading out my risk, right? It's hedging. Because if I just enter QQQ calls, and I know it's a day where the strength keeps flipping and it's unpredictable, well, if I just enter QQQ calls and I'm bullish on both ES and NQ and both have solid PTs, and NQ flips weak and ES goes to PT and NQ doesn't even move, well then not only do I miss out on gains, but I'm also taking a red trade as well. But if I spread out my risk, if my hypothesis is correct in any fashion, if any of them get to PT, I'm going to be green. Possibly not by as much, because obviously the weaker position will make less money, but it's something that boosts win rate at the expense of possible profits. So it's something that I typically do. But anyways, I did enter SPX here. A lot stronger. Bullish liquidity sweep, demand bounce. I don't care that it's in supply. The supply's been tested a ton of times. Looks good. And yeah, all those things. So these are my pivots here. Got this and this. Those are what I'm looking for. And I forgot about this. I added on this candle. Now, I was in roughly one full-size position. A little less, because I entered SPX light instead of half size. But let me read what I said. So it was roughly right here that I said longs would look phenomenal if this drop invalidates. It did end up invalidating, and then it pulled back. I did end up trimming. There's just so much that happened yesterday. I'm like reading my channel to catch up. I did trim a little bit of calls at SPX Supply, or ES Supply, I mean. Uh, or I entered way before. Oh, this supply wasn't there. Okay, that's cool. This supply wasn't here yesterday. Again, the supply and demand indicator is going to get an update. This was a supply that I had. I'm like, why did I trim a supply right here? I'm like, okay. This was the only supply that I saw at the time. And I said I would trim its supply. And I did trim its supply. So I trimmed its supply. And that allowed me to free up some buying power, right? Now, of course, I have plenty of buying power. I can do whatever I want. But as far as risk management, it freed up. So I'm able to expose more. Now I said NQ now has a now ES hit supply allowing for perfect trim. That's what happened here. Now keep in mind it could be a little confusing because this what time frame is this supply? Why don't Okay, yeah, it's a 4-hour supply zone. So this 4-hour supply was not here yet. It either wasn't formed or wasn't displaying for me for some reason. So this was my only supply. And ES was a pretty good trim, in my opinion, at that supply because I don't know if, and usually you're going to get a cup and handle. Usually in this formation, you're going to get some kind of pullback before it gets to high of day. That's just typical. That's what happens. So before it got to supply, I said in my channel, and I quote, looking to trim SPX at supply to hedge risk and of possible NQ flag fail. Okay. Now at the time, ES was a lot stronger than NQ, and NQ was flagging. Well, if this bull flag fails, not only is NQ going to dump to here, but ES is going to get dragged down as well. And right now, at this current point, I actually think it has an okay chance of happening. So that was kind of the rationale behind trimming when it gets to specifically this supply zone. Now, it did get there. I trimmed. Beautiful. I was also able to trim a little bit of QQQ, but not much because what? It wasn't really a plan. I sold like one contract, and then I realized, oh, that it looks good because this is a perfect cup and handle now. Or not quite perfect, but this is very nice bullish consolidation. This is an extremely bullish formation here. But what ended up happening is it perfectly just kissed the trend line and went right back down, leaving a perfect 3-point touch trend line. Okay, perfect trend lines, they break. I am bearish, or I'm bullish for every perfect 3-point and up trend line to break. Just like when I see a perfect double bottom or perfect triple top or any of those things, I'm bullish for this to break now. So now in my head, a pullback is an opportunity. And guess what? I just trimmed, which allows me to add on a pullback without being exposed 2 to 3x my average position, which if I take a loss on that, that's going to screw up my entire day and possibly my psychology. So I have an opportunity here. And I end up averaging down, or it wasn't really an average down. Yeah, it was kind of an average down. It wasn't like a huge one because I waited for the buying wick to happen. So then we dumped. We put in this volume spike, which is the first indication of a possible reversal. And then we put in this buying wick. And during this buying wick, I added. So I said re-added what I trimmed on this buying wick. A bit risky, but it's not bad. And realistically added more than I trimmed because I mostly just trimmed SPX and I added on both. So that's an opportunity that I took. And it's mostly because of the confidence of the trend line break. Now keep in mind, just because I added doesn't mean I'm not going to stop out. And I was 100% willing to stop out if this entire buying wick invalidates. If so, I'm just taking a loss and moving on, right, with my day. Which means I wouldn't trade after that. Here you can see NQ flipped stronger than ES. Not by a ton. But it's starting to indicate a strength change. And it's looking great. It ended up being a flawless trim and a flawless add. So, like, a lot happened yesterday. A lot of trades happened. I trade for a lot longer. And it's because of these pivots. I mean, when I have beautiful pivots below and beautiful pivots above, even though it looks like it's chopping from far away, the way it's oscillating is still allowing me to make money because pivots are being swept. I mean, right out of the gate, ES ran up and swept this pivot here, allowing me to make money. It swept these pivots down here, typically allowing me to make money. Of course, I wasn't in the right side of the trade. So chopping only kills me when no pivots are swept. That's when I'll be red every single time, no matter what. It's just what it is, right? But if we're kind of oscillating, but also sweeping pivots, then it's like the opposite. Then I'm able to play to my pivots beautifully. And then right when it comes back down and invalidates most of the run, I can play to the buy side pivots. It's beautiful. It's a great time. So it's very entertaining, but a lot of work. And we did end up getting there, or should have ended up getting there. Let me see what happened. We got. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. We sat in this trade forever. This is why I was here for an hour and a half. So when NQ swept the high and ES got new high, I trimmed, and then I sat in the trade forever. I had a little bit left, and there we go. Wait, this wasn't the trade that I sat in forever. No, this wasn't the. Well, this was. So NQ just hit PT. I'm looking for both E. I'm in both SPX and QQQ calls. This is my QQQ PT. This is my SPX PT right here for ES to get to here. Well, NQ flipped a lot stronger than ES, and it flipped a lot stronger on this uptrend here. Trimmed a little bit here, but not much. And then took my heavy QQQ trim here. Now, ES still wasn't at PT yet. So I was still in my SPX position. Still waiting. Still waiting. A solid 12 minutes go by of just waiting. And I'm only in QQQ runners. Still waiting. Still waiting. Went all the way back to red. Still waiting. There we go. And now that ES hit PT, I'm like, well, it's pretty damn close to getting my next PT, which is NQ supply. So I guess I'll hold my runners till then. There we go. So market sold right when this happened. And finally, I was done with the day. So, you know, I got a big trim across the board, mostly on QQQ. I did trim SPX as well. And it did unfortunately suck because when SPX got up here, I didn't, like, the contract didn't make a new high of day, right? Because they decayed so much from this chopping. But yeah, that's pretty much what took so long, is NQ hit PT and ES. From the time NQ hit PT, ES didn't hit PT until, and almost 20 minutes later. And by then, I waited an extra 4 minutes for NQ to get my final PT, and then I sold. So pretty much at the peaks, the QQQ runners got 60% gains, and the SPX calls got 51% gains. Keep in mind, the SPX calls, they didn't make a new high right here. They got to the same price they were at right here. So it wasn't just my runners. Most of my sells on SPX were at 50%, and yeah, pretty much at 50%. And aside from this trim right here, which is only like 10, 15%, most were sold at 50%. QQQ, I probably averaged about 40-ish, 45-ish percent on it. These calls did make a new high of day, but they didn't get much higher from this point. But that's when my day finally ended. So a lot happened on that day. So I will just kind of go through everything super quick. So within this big trade, remember, I trimmed here when it hit the supply zone, re-added here as a result from this confidence, and then I trimmed and managed profits on the way up. So this is one set of trades here. My first trade of the day was this, got swept. I got absolutely hornswoggled, which is very unlucky. It was my first loss of the day. And my PT was, I remember where my PT was. It was somewhere. It was the ESPT. And then I was in this here. It was either here or here. See, like when a lot of stuff happens, I just don't really remember. There we go. And had to re-enter here. Yeah, this was pretty much it. And then this trade here. And I forgot one more. and then I caught the beautiful puts roughly here. And on KQQ, my average was like here. All right, there we go. So that's all the crap that happened yesterday. Lots of trades. Lots of trades, but it was good. I mean, we were on point. Only 2 losses. First trade, full size loss, minus 25% ish. Second trade, which was a re entry, which was KQQ calls and SPX calls. I got plus 28% and plus 34%. And then I hopped in puts, both KQQ puts and SPX puts. Those got plus 37% and then plus 28%. And those half size calls that stopped out within 30 seconds got minus 31%, but it was half size. And then the calls. The calls ended up getting 50% and 60%. So pretty green day. 2 losses. One was full size, one was very small. And then pretty much four trades worth of full size wins. Very nice. Now we will quickly jump to today because that was a lot to cover. I will quickly go over today's price action. It was very easy. Didn't require any brain power whatsoever. It was so freaking easy, man. Obviously the trend is bullish. I don't really need to zoom out. Bullish trend, I don't really have much though. The closest thing I have is a supply zone up here, which I'm bullish to break eventually. But I don't really have much to go off of. We open, and NQ super bullish. If I had a nearby pivot, I could enter KQQ calls here, but I have nothing nearby, so I need some kind of solid divergence. And I get it on this candle. I enter half-size KQQ calls on this candle due to the strength divergence. But I plan on averaging down or averaging up. I plan on averaging up if this selling wick invalidates, which would be here, and ES comes up to here, and then I'll play it past ES new high of day. But I plan on averaging down if ES makes a lower low, which I need it to make a lower low, so I need to get 1 tick under this point here. So I enter those QQQ calls half size, and it misses it. We get a perfect double bottom here. It fails to sweep a lower low, and I miss my average down. I didn't miss it, I just couldn't take it, unfortunately. And I just dumped this trade the second ES got to new high of day. Which really sucks because sold it here right when ES got a new high of day. I'm out immediately. Done. On that trade, I got plus 23% gains, but I entered at 68 cents. I should have filled at 65 cents. I don't know why I filled at 68. It was a rough fill. But my average down would have been around 47 cents if ES went 1 tick lower, which means I would have had an average of like 57 cents. And at 84 cents, that's more than a 50% gain. I would have well over doubled my gains on that trade if that didn't miss. So that was pretty frustrating. But it was still, it is what it is. You can't do much about it. So exited at the PT that I initially agreed to. And I didn't have any trades. The only trade that I had were puts if most of this move invalidates, unless we put in some kind of nice bull flag. I have this pivot here. Oops, that's the wrong line. That's the wrong line as well. I got this pivot here. I got this one here, here, here. That's most of it. And then I have supply down here. I mean demand down there. I don't have anything, so I'm patiently waiting for something to happen. We sweep. We start dropping. Boom, I'm able to fill. So I fill puts on both. Half size on both. Again, can't really figure out which one is going to stay weaker, which one's going to stay stronger. Don't really know. So I fill puts pretty much at the same candle. I filled KQQ puts first on this candle and then right at the start of the next candle. Or not even at the start of the next candle. 5 seconds after, not even 5, like 3 seconds after I filled the KQQ puts, I filled the SPX puts half size. Going for these pivots here. Oops. Basic trades. I did have to go half size because it was an early entry, but I went in on both. So it was pretty much one full size trade. So we started with a plus 23% trade on half size position, so pretty small. This was beautiful. This was a great time. I sold pretty much everything. When this hit, when this candle, when ES hit the lows, I got plus 49% gains on both. Okay, so Beautiful. And I only kept a tiny runner position for this QQQ pivot down here. Okay, because this is a major pivot. I really like this pivot, but we put in a huge buying wake. If it bounces, I'm out. This is a bounce I sold. So there goes that trade. Done with that. Was beautiful, 49%. I think I averaged probably 40 or 45% on that trade between my sells. And with that single Kiki, I didn't even keep an SPX runner. I kept one QQQ runner. And that's a potential bullish liquidity sweep. So if we invalidate majority of the move to the upside, I got to get in. Now keep in mind, I don't really want to get in another trade if we go back up, because I'm fairly green on the day, and today was a lot less work than yesterday. But I have to get into this trade. I'm triggered in. If I don't get into this trade, it's poor psychology. The reason why I wouldn't want to get into this trade is for monetary reasons. I want to not give any gains back, which is an invalid reason to stop trading. None of you guys should do that. You should only trade. Money's a result of trading, not a cause, right? Or profits are a result of correct trading, not a cause. Okay. So if you stop trading or start trading for money, you're going to get your ass kicked. Money should never, ever, ever be a factor of your trades. What's a factor is your edge. And if you're triggered in, you get in within your elected time frame of trading, which for me, it's the first hour pretty much, unless I'm stuck in a trade like yesterday. So I have to enter calls here. I did just enter SPX calls. I only did enter half size as well on this. And I only entered SPX. So this was a true half size position. And I'm pretty bullish for it to get to this high, but the problem is we have news coming up. It's 6:57 my time. At 7 o'clock, Powell talks. We have housing data. I don't really think housing data is going to be good, and a foreshadowing here, it wasn't, of course. But also, typically, you're going to get some kind of pullback right before high of day. It's pretty normal. And with Powell testifying, you don't really know. Well, during this trade, I kind of forgot about Powell testifying until this candle. I'm like, ooh, okay, I'm going to trim. So I trimmed half of my position in profits. Now I entered the trade at 2.55. My SPX contracts are 2.55. They were at 3.1 up here for a nice 25-ish% gain. But they pulled back to 2.75. And when I was thinking about, what I could add, because, I could put in bullish consolidation, realized news was now only 1 minute away. And I decided to trim half of my entire position, slightly in the green. I trimmed for plus $20 a contract. Right, I trimmed at plus 7. I think most actually filled at 2.7. So right around $15 profit a contract. Some did fill at 2.75. But now I'm in half size trade. Not really planning on adding with news. And this looks like I'm going to stop out. ES slipped super strong and barely missed my stop loss. So I moved my stop loss to here. Roughly 1 tick above, really. And I stopped out on this candle. Right when this candle hit this low, I was out. So I stopped out of the rest of that trade at 1.9, I believe it was. Let me check real quick. Yep, 1.9. So I trimmed for $15 a contract, half of the position. I sold the second half for minus $65 a contract, which means I averaged minus $50 a contract. Okay, which is a 20% loss. But that was only a quarter size position. And I averaged a 20% loss on, it was a very small loss because I sold half of it in profit and I only took that percent loss on a quarter size position. I mean, $65 of 255 is roughly 20%, 25% actually. So I took a 25% loss is what I averaged on this trade with only a quarter size position, which is beautiful, beautiful risk management. However, it did bounce right after, and I did say, you know what, I'm probably done trading, but if it goes back up, I may not be able to resist because I'm very bullish for it to get to this high at this point. In this candle, I almost got into calls, but you guys can see an issue. Similar to yesterday, we have a lot of higher lows on NQ, a lot of them, okay? And what's the problem with this trade? Well, with this trade, if I enter here, my stop loss is probably going to be roughly here. The problem is if NQ gets just one red candle down to here, I'm now bearish for this pivot. I literally have a 1 candle bias buffer. If NQ gets 1 decent red candle, I'm bearish. So I'm both bullish and bearish at the same time. I'm bullish for ES to get new high of day, but I'm also bearish for NQ to get this pivot, which means during this green candle, I'm bullish, but if I get a red candle, I'm bearish. That's how tight my bias is, or close my bias is from switching. Like, it has a low temper almost. And that's a huge problem, because then what do? Do I just stop out super early here and then hop into puts? Or do I enter half size and then average down if NQ gets here and miss out on this easy put trade that would show up in hopes that it would go back up? You know, I can't put a good plan together of how to execute it, so I don't even enter. If it gets one more decent green candle and pulls back after, then I would. But this candle showed up. Now, I was done alerting at this point. It was a green day today. I mean, today was nice. You know, first trade plus 23%, should have been more. Next trade, 49%, two 49% trades. So 1 plus 23% trade, two 49% trades, and then 1 tiny loss. That's a good day. I'm happy with my gains today. I'm up by 2 or 3 trades, my average trades. I'm happy with it today. But, so anyways, I say I'm pretty much done alerting, but this setup looks pretty damn good. So I did end up taking QQQ puts. I did put out the TA alert in my channel. I said right here, QQQ looks fantastic. What's my exact verbiage that I used? Oh, I said NQ looks great in all caps for my yellow line. And I drew this trade on my chart for you guys with the stop loss. It would be a full-size trade, not a half-size trade, because by the time you stop out, I'm bullish for ES to get new high of day. And we had this beautiful kind of pennant formed here. So I told you guys that NQ looked great for the yellow line. And it got there easily. Boom. There you go. And I sold the rest here when ES got to demand. Happened to sell the bottom, which was very nice. But I couldn't really trim any here. I filled like 1 or 2 contracts, but the buying wick was too big. I ended up filling the rest when ES made the lower low, and this demand was hit. And that was another 42% trade to finish off the day. Now, keep in mind, I personally could have been full size, but thought I was going to be done trading. This was kind of a bonus trade, so I wasn't really willing to get back a bunch of profits on it. I entered half size personally again. So lighter sizes today. But I end up getting, 1 plus 23% trade, 2 49% trades, another 42% trade here, and then 1 tiny loss. I don't even know what the average loss for that trade might have been, I don't know, 15% on a half size trade, which is tiny. I don't know, only lost on 3 SPX contracts, so it's not a lot at all. But so yeah, that was my day. That's how it ended right there, and it did end up bouncing right after, which means it was a beautiful sell, nice demand bounce. And yeah, so that covers finally all the trades that I did yesterday and today. My brain is fried as a result. But type in chat, do you guys have any questions regarding any of the trades that I took or hypotheses that I came up with? No questions. Everyone's good? All right, sweet. Well, hopefully that was digestible. It was a lot of yapping. But I'll let you guys know when it's posted. I did tell you guys I would do that trade review, and I try to be a man of my word, so I didn't want to skip it, especially with so many things that happened yesterday. It was an important trade review to do. So I will let you guys know when it's recorded. But all right, if you guys need anything, let me know. And if you guys continue to trade today, good luck with that. And I will see you guys later. Oh, wait, hang on. Lunacy says, why do you use ES and NQ for SPX and QQQ? I only chart on ES and NQ, and that's because context. I trade the open. You should not be looking at you should never look at the SPX chart, definitely. And QQQ and SPY lack context. If I'm trading the open, I need all the context from overnight price action. nothing displays that clearer than the futures charts. And the futures charts are way better for supply and demand as well, because you're not supposed to use supply and demand that forms during extended trading hours. So more supply and demand zones, more pivots, more context, all of the above. It's better. And I mean, I started doing this way before everyone was trading futures, but a lot of people that follow my channel trade futures as well, and they're actually able to use my channel to trade futures because I do my TA on the futures charts. So they don't have to convert anything in their head, so it's easy. But all right, now I will officially see you guys later. Have a good day.